Hello ladies and gentlemen, once again this is Jeremy Smith, Photo J the Great. Sorry guys, I've been a bit absent lately. I've had a lot going on and I've been sick and just lots and lots of things have been going on. But I am still well. And anyways, I thought I would get back to making some videos once again. As you guys know, I am a Nikon user personally. And I've got lots and lots of Nikon equipment. I've spent pretty much all my days as a photographer shooting with Nikon. So obviously there is going to be a little bit of joking coming from me about the whole Nikon versus Canon thing. As you guys have probably figured out as you look at my videos more though, the biggest thing that separates most cameras these days is not so much image quality, it's more of a question of features and more of a question of exactly what you're going to do with the camera. Not long ago we took a look at the Nikon D600, and that's Nikon's kind of mid-range full-frame camera. Today we're going to be looking at the Canon 6D, and like the Nikon, it's kind of hard to, well, like the Nikon D600, it's kind of hard to say exactly where this camera fits because, we don't really have anything to compare this type of camera to. This is pretty much an entirely new range of camera. In the past, just like a Nikon, if you wanted to go to a full-frame camera, you had to go up to something like the 5D. So essentially, you were having to go up to a pro-level body, which meant a $3,000 price point or more to be able to get full frame. Then of course the Nikon D600 came out, and that changed everything. And by the way, I will go ahead and mention something else too. I think back with some of my D600 videos, we were all kind of wondering, okay, is the D600 a pro level camera? Is it an entry level camera? Is it a mid-range camera? And I was saying that it's more of a mid-range camera. As it turns out, I started looking at things a lot more, and ultimately it finally occurred to me, man, the big indicator as to whether or not this is a pro level camera, which by the way guys, that term is a bit ambiguous honestly, but in case you guys were wondering, after a little bit more research, I looked at Nikon's NPS list, which is Nikon Professional Services, and on in order to join NPS you have to have a pro level DSLR. And so in the past they had the D700 on there, the D800, D4, but they also list the D600 on there as well. So I guess Nikon considers the D600 to be a pro level DSLR. So anyways, that's noteworthy for all you Nikon users out there. But anyways, just like the D600, the 6D blurs the line between between models. This camera is, in a lot of ways, it's a mid-range body, so it's kind of like a Canon 60D, if you're familiar with it. And so, it's still has the weather sealing, but it's not a full metal body like the higher cameras. So it's very, very similar to, the way Nikon designed the D600. It's also an SD slot, which you guys will see that whenever we look at the camera closer. And it's an SD slot instead of a compact flash. You've got a little bit less viewfinder coverage, that sort of thing. So they definitely make a attempt to differentiate this from the higher models, even though they give it a full frame sensor. So anyways, on this 6D, 20.2 megapixel sensor. So it is a different sensor. And I'm really, really interested to see how this does in comparison to the 5D3. With Canon, with Canon as a brand and the features they offer, things like that, for my personal uses, Nikon works a lot better overall. However, a lot of people will tell you that I've said that the 5D3 is the first Canon that's come out that addresses all my previous little issues with Canon that I didn't like as far as just usability is concerned. Because whenever I started out as a photographer, I tried Nikon and I tried Canon. I didn't like a lot of things on Canon, but I liked them much better on Nikon. So the 5D3 fixed a lot of things I didn't like about Canon, and even brings some new things to the table that that I think are very, very nice. The 6D, we'll just have to see how it goes. I'll have to shoot with it a little bit more. But anyways, as I said, 20.2 megapixel sensor, ISO range from 100 all the way up to 25,600, 11 autofocus points. Now, one thing that's interesting to me about this, and this is something that I actually have had a lot of debate with a lot of people about, of course, as you guys know, the Canon 5D Mark II from the previous generation was also an 11-point focus system. However, it's interesting to note that that camera had all cross-type sensors. Now, this camera does have a center AF point that's more sensitive than some of the previous generation cameras, but all of the points aren't cross-type, only the center one is. So that's, I don't know, I thought that was kind of an interesting decision on Canon's part. And this is actually very, very, very much like the Nikon D600. You know, it's just another area where the camera companies, Nikon and Canon both, decided to, you know, kind of trim a couple features off the camera, you know, to basically make you want to go up to the higher model. Nikon, they put the 39-point system in on the D600, you know, to differentiate it from the 51-point focus system on the pro level cameras, and pretty much Canon did the same thing. The D800 and D4, sorry, whoops, wrong brand. The 5D3 has 61 focus points, and this one has 9. So once again, just another area to kind of cut things back a bit. This one's a little bit slower than the 5D Mark III. Now, you guys know that I'm not a sports shooter. You know, I shoot portraits, so honestly I don't really care that much about the speed. But if you do care about the speed, this is something that's noteworthy also. The 5D Mark III, of course, is 6 frames a second. This shoots at 4.5. So, you know, that's definitely worth mentioning. And let's see here. What else? Oh, yes. Now, one thing I do like about this camera a lot, and I actually have been playing with this quite a bit already, but we're actually going to have to make a separate video just to talk about this because it's a very, very comprehensive feature. And this is something that I can definitely give Canon, you know, I can definitely give them the props for this. And that is the included built-in Wi-Fi. Now, Nikon could really learn a lot from Canon in this area because Nikon, well, they like to module us to death in, you know, if you want GPS, well, here's a module for that. Or if you want Wi-Fi, here's a module for that. But Canon, they did a good job by just including the Wi-Fi built into the camera itself. So, you know, I'm here to give credit, you know, where it's due. So that's something that's definitely a good thing. And their wireless solution's a lot more comprehensive than what you find on, you know, on the D600. If you're using the D600, of course, you have to use the WU1A transmitter. And of course, I've got a video on that you guys can take a look at. But on Nikon, you have to use that transmitter, and you're pretty much limited to being able to just fire the camera and view the live view, and of course transfer the images wirelessly. And sadly, that's about it. On this camera, you have lots of things you can do. You actually can, of course, you can transfer your photos via Wi-Fi, but you can also control the camera, but you can actually control all of its settings. So you can actually go in and change f-stop, shutter speed, that sort of thing. In addition to being able to actually view its live view. You can also transfer photos to a printer wirelessly too. So there's lots and lots of features that this camera can do in terms of its Wi-Fi settings, and so many that we're just going to have to make a video to go over all that. It is a bit harder for me to shoot with the Canons. And I don't mean from a usability standpoint. I just mean from the standpoint of, you know, I actually don't have anything Canon. So that's why it does take me a little bit longer with my Canon reviews. With the Nikon cameras, I can get the camera and I can immediately start using it with my flashes and lenses and all my other Nikon goodies. But with Canon, I have to, borrow some lenses and stuff. So definitely just be patient with me as as I get things together. Maybe I'll borrow some things from my good buddy Right Way Photo, and maybe Steve will let me borrow a few things and we can go out and shoot some. Let's see here. I think that's actually about it. Oh yes, I did want to point out one other thing that I do like on Canon, and this is something which we're going to take a closer look at this just in one moment here. But one other thing I do like about Canon are the different video options. Now, Nikon and Canon are kind of going about things a little bit differently in terms of video. Nikon's almost an underdog in video in a way. On the D600, one of the biggest things is if you're shooting, even though you can shoot manual video, you can change your aperture, shutter speed, ISO, all that good stuff. The downside is if you want to change aperture, you have to first exit the live view and then go back. You have to exit live view, you have to change your aperture and then go back into live view again. And that's mostly because of Nikon's F-mount, which still has a mechanical mechanism controlling the lens opening. On Canon, with their mount being all electronic, that's something you don't have to worry about. So, everything all the way up to a 1DX, all the way down to like, a Rebel T3i, you can still change your aperture in live view because that lens opening is being controlled electronically. So that's something that I like a lot on Canon. And there's definitely a lot of reasons why a lot of people kind of gravitate towards Canon if they're going to shoot video. And so yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, what else do we have here? I do think that eventually the whole DSLR video thing is going to die off. I think that Nikon and Canon both need to really think about how things are going in the market in that area, but that's a subject for another video. I can see right now that I'm going to have to spend a lot of time with this camera to give you guys a really good evaluation of it, and so I'm not going to try to squeeze too much in this video. We'll go ahead and take a closer look at the camera itself, and we'll kind of go over some of the basic controls, and then we'll go from there. Taking a look at the back of the camera here, one of the main things that is definitely better on all the cameras now is the controls for live view and video. So you'll notice, oh yeah, by the way, for you Canon users, the power switch is over on this side. So it's not, down here like it was on the 5D2 and 50D and 40D and cameras like that. It's up here now, just like it is on the 7D and 5D3. And I like how all the camera manufacturers are doing much better with their live view controls. So you can see here, if we want to go to video mode, you can go down there. Otherwise, still mode is right here. And in still mode, you just hit there to begin your live view, where you can then take a still photo, which actually I have no card in this right now. Canon, they also give you this little Q button, and once you hit that, you can actually navigate around here and change things like your picture styles, your white balance. You can do, let's see here. Oh, cool. It has a bracketing function. White balance bracketing. Cool. That's how that works. And see, we can basically go in here and customize things. Drive modes, focus modes. This is basically exactly like, I guess I do have a card in there. Forgot to put that in there already. Basically the Q button on Canon is pretty much like the I button on Nikon, the little info button. So pretty much the same sort of thing here. You can go through and change everything here as far as metering, file size, that sort of thing. But you also have your controls up top here. After looking at all the DSLRs these days, I kind of wonder how much longer we're actually going to have this display on top. It's almost like a legacy sort of thing, you know? It'd be like having your PC still have a parallel printer connection or something, you know? I kind of wonder what we're going to do about this in the future. It's not hurting anything, of course, having it there, but just kind of a side note. Because you can essentially access all the same info in the back that you can on the top on all the DSLRs these days. And battery life is not as much of an issue as it used to be. But anyways, up here we've got autofocus. So once again, you can see that I can go up there, rotate R, dial on back, go between the focus options. Same thing with the drive. So you have your, so let's look at this a bit closer. There we go. Same thing with our drive here. We've got our silent rather. Silent with continuous. Got our self-timer option. Self-timer with remote and delay. And that's one thing that's cool about Canon. They actually know how to make a camera with a nice silent mode. On Nikon, the silent mode pretty much doesn't work. Anyways, so on this right here, if we're in a single shot, you can hear that there's a pretty audible sound. Don't know if you guys can hear that. But if we go over and we change it to the silent mode, like this, and we go here, it quiets things down quite a bit. We can even do that with continuous shooting. So anyways, kind of neat. Then ISO is right there. Automatic ISO. This is one area where Canon used to be a lot better than Nikon with their auto ISO, because it would actually take into account the focal length of the lens. So if you were shooting at 200 millimeters, you know, and required a faster shutter speed, the camera would automatically know that you were shooting at 200 millimeters, and it would bump the ISO up to allow you to attain the faster shutter speed. And this is something that, of course, Canon still do. Thankfully, that's something that Nikons now do also. And let's see here, metering is right there. Now, I'm going to have to test this camera and find out if this is true. Oh yeah, our little light right there. Ah, cool. Anyways, I'm going to have to test this camera and find out if it's true or not. You know, if it still works the same way on this one. Well, I know it was true on the previous models, I just don't know if it works this way on this model. That's one of the biggest differences I've noticed between Canon metering and Nikon metering. If you're using the spot metering mode on a Canon camera, the spot meter is basically just the center part of the frame. So it just meters off, you know, it's a spot meter, of course, but it just meters off the center point. Now on Nikon, spot metering works a little bit differently. If you're in spot metering on a Nikon camera, the spot meter is not tied just to the center of the frame. It's actually tied to the focus point. So whichever focus point you have selected ends up being the actual area where the camera, you know, spot meters. So that's something that's kind of interesting. I have to test and see how it is on this camera. Would be kind of cool if that were different. And by the way, guys, I'm not downing Canon at all. But let's face it, there's no such thing as an unbiased review. That term is complete rubbish as far as I'm concerned. Everyone is going to have their bias. My bias is obviously not Canon, but I will give credit due, you know, where it's due. And of course, I'm going to test this even more, just like I do with every camera. And even on Nikons and Sonys, I still point out their flaws just as much as I do this. Okay, so on to the left side of the camera here. We've got our remote jack. So this is the same sort of jack that you'd find on the on the 5D3 and on the 60D. Actually, I can't remember if the 60D uses this jack or not, but anyways, it's the same one as on the 5D3. It's not the same type of remote jack as the Rebels, so it's the 3-pin jack on this one. Microphone jack on the bottom, and then over on this side we've got our USB/analog AV out, and then at the bottom we have our mini HDMI. Pretty comprehensive there. And of course this is a single SD card slot. This also uses the same battery. I believe this is the LP6. Yeah, LP6 is what Canon calls this. This is the same battery that's used in a lot of other Canon cameras. So kudos to Canon there too, because they left us with the same battery. So this is the same battery that the 60D takes, same battery that the 5D Mark II and 5D Mark III take. It's also the same battery as the 7D. So if you are a current Canon user, you don't have to worry about buying more batteries. Taking a look at some of our other menus here. Pretty standard Canon layout. Everything is where you would expect it to be. We've got a couple of different shooting menus here. And let's see here. External speed light control, mirror lockup. Let's see here. Exposure compensation, ISO settings. Auto lighting optimizer. That's very, very much like Nikon's D lighting. I don't think I will actually end up paying this much attention. I don't pay much attention on Nikons, just because I'm the type of shooter that likes to do, I obviously like to get everything as right as possible in the camera, but, well, let's face it, those models aren't as pretty in real life until they get a bit of Photoshop work. So I shoot everything in RAW usually, and so I don't really use a whole lot of in-camera stuff. But basically what the auto lighting optimizer does, it basically helps the camera capture more information in the shadow regions of the photo. So yeah, it's kind of like Nikon's D lighting, and I'm sure there's some subtle differences between it and D lighting, but I'll probably play with it a little bit for you guys and kind of see what I come up with on that. White balance bracketing, that's pretty cool. Let's see here. High ISO noise reduction, highlight tone priority. This camera does have built-in HDR, which is something that you see on a lot more cameras these days. Grid display, let's see here, aspect ratio. 4332, 16:9. Would be helpful to have a 5:4 mode there. If you're into printing, 8x10s and 11x14s and such. Silent live view shooting. I will definitely have to look at that a bit more. A few different playback options. Let's see here. GPS, Wi-Fi. This is probably the main thing I'm proud of the most on this camera, is the as far as extra features are concerned, is that built-in Wi-Fi. I definitely am excited about that. I think Nikon and Sony should definitely take note of that, because that's something that's really cool. Finally, someone got the message that, photographers are tired of buying extra modules. We have to have a module for our wireless flash, we have to have a module for GPS, we have to have a module for Wi-Fi, we have to buy more batteries. I mean, we have enough crap as photographers to carry around already. So it's very, very nice that they decided to put the Wi-Fi in this, just right out of the box. That's how it should be. I don't know about you guys, but I would definitely pay more for the camera to have these sorts of features built in. So what if it costs $30 or $40 more, or maybe $100 more on the price of the camera, just having it built in? makes a huge difference. Okay, so anyways, I will definitely be going over this in a lot more detail, and I'll report back with you guys. Here lately, I've actually been off on some other projects, and so I haven't been taking as many photographs as I had been previously. But as soon as I get to more shooting, which should actually be very soon, I'm going to take out this camera, and also I'm going to take out a few other cameras that we've looked at in past videos, such as the Sony Alpha 899. And anyways, I'm going to take those out and do a bit more shooting, report back. But until then, this is Jeremy Smith, Photog Day the Great, signing off. Definitely don't forget to like this video if you like it. If you don't, then okay, that's cool too. Definitely share it, and if you have any comments or questions or any other feedback, just write me in the comments below. And definitely don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, this is Photog Day the Great, signing off.